Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very senior professional from the world of sports from New Jersey, USA, Mr. Frederick A. Mangione. Fred, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, my friend.
Fred is the Senior Vice President, Commercial Sales and Marketing of New York Jets. He's an executive leader with proven strategic experience in the identification, analysis, and implementation of aggressive strategies to further organizational growth and operations for the NFL, NBA, and NHL franchisees, along with multi-purpose world-class sports and entertainment venues. So, Fred, before we talk about the New York Jets, tell me a little bit about your journey to becoming the senior VP.
Josh?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry about that. Well, yeah. Well, I've been in the industry for 28 years now, and primarily on the sports and entertainment side. I started out in the minor leagues, as they would say, since I couldn't hit a ball or hit a three-pointer, like a lot of people, athletes, that is. They start in the minor leagues and they make their way up to the pros. So I started out by working minor league hockey, arena football, just to kind of cut my teeth in the industry and do what everyone says. How can you make your way and you generate revenue? So I did that for 5 years. After that, I went and worked for FIFA, where I worked for the 1999 Women's World Cup.
Wow.
Gave me a great experience. I know the World Cup just finished up for the women here in the U.S. Unfortunately, we came up a little short. But in 99, I had the chance to run the sales and marketing for the Giant Stadium venue in New York. So it was a great experience for me. I was still young at that point. And like I said, worked for FIFA, and that global sport was probably one of the best jobs, if the best job I've ever had.
Fascinating.
Yeah, and really here in the States, the women's sports has just grown tremendously, but it wasn't where it is. It's not near where it is today. And I always joke around when the women, they won the whole thing in 99, and for the parade they took them down Main Street America in Walt Disney World. So that was the parade. They went through the center of Walt Disney World, and then when they won, I think in 16, or I'm off a couple of years, they got the real parade and they took them down to Canyon of Heroes in New York City and got the celebration they deserved. So I always say that alone shows you how far you've come, because that's where the Yankees go, and Giants win the Super Bowl or whoever, like that's where they all go. So so after that, I went on and I went to work for the New Jersey Nets. They were still in New Jersey. I had a bunch of, the World Cup really gave me a great platform, and I had a bunch of opportunities in soccer and had a chance to maybe go work in Major League Baseball. But unfortunately, my mom passed away at a young age of 48 of breast cancer. So I decided to stay local, and a gentleman I knew called me to come run his sales team for the New Jersey Nets. And I told him I'd give him 2 years, because after that, I'm probably going to move on. And 18 years later, opening up a building, moving to Brooklyn, changing a brand. And, I started as director of sales and ultimately ended as the chief operating officer when I left.
Wow.
So I really had a chance to open up the building, learn the entertainment side, and it really gave me a plethora of new skills and a chance to really grow my career. And then after that, I knew someone who worked in the NFL, a gentleman by the name of Neil Glatt, who I knew over the years. He was in the NFL for over 15 years at the league office, and when I got the Jet job, we always stayed close. And one day he said to me, hey, would you have an interest of coming over and help me with my sales team? So I did that. I ran sales and marketing with him for about 6-7 years. He moved on to run a sports agency, and then I moved on a little bit after that, running my own consultant firm now, where I'm running, working with brands in the Major League Soccer, sports hedge funds, the collegiate space. So it's been a really good opportunity for me to, as you started the conversation, spread my wings, get involved with different things. So
fantastic. Thank you.
A bit of a long-winded answer, but
no, thank you so much. I think your journey is so exciting. Thank you. So tell me, what sets the New York Jets brand apart from the other NFL teams?
Well, I think it all begins and ends with New York. I mean, New York is just, people ask me all the time, what's the difference when you worked in the NBA as opposed to the NFL? And for me, the NFL is just at a different level. It's at a different level from the revenues. It's at a different level of scale. I mean, here in the States, the first game of the season kicks off tonight. And, you know, every year it just seems like the way they build anticipation gets better and better and better. So, you know, so from that perspective, from the revenues and what the day-to-day is, it's a different level. Now, the job, what you're looking to do, your brand, like I said, the NFL is the biggest brand there is in sports. And when you're in New York, the pressures and the brands just get escalated even bigger. So, you know, the Jets, even though, and I think it's going to turn around this year, have been on the downside for a number of years. I think, you know, if and when, and I think it's going to be this year, they start winning some games, you're going to see that brand take off like a rocket ship. I mean, it's just ready to take off.
Good luck. But, you know, I don't know too much about NFL, but whatever I read while preparing for you, my conversation, NFL seems to be a very fiercely competitive environment, both on and off the field. How does this influence your strategies in commercial sales and marketing?
Well, again, being in New York, there's 9 sports teams, lots of competition. There's competition in our own building. I mean, the Giants play in the same building that the Jets play in. So the competition from that end, you know, you have to show how you're different, how you're more strategic. Where can you get your brand to? You know, today everyone wants to get younger. They want to know what you're doing on TikTok. They want to know what you're doing on social media. They want to know what your content is. You know, the content team at the Jets is just an amazing group where they're a machine. I mean, I've worked around a lot of content teams in my career, and I used to always joke with the gentleman who runs the area, you know, it's a machine back there. And because it's nonstop. And you need buy-in overall. You need buy-in from ownership. You need buy-in from the players. You need to be able to be in that locker room, and when they're walking out and you're filming them, you need the general manager and the coach to say, we're on board, and, you know, we feel that this is a great opportunity for us. So that angle of getting accessibility, how the brand has now become a global brand. You know, the Jets received the opportunity to do marketing in London before I left, and I worked on that a little bit. And, you know, now if you live in London right now, you know, the Jets are London's team. So that's really how the difference maker is going to be as they grow and they win, and they have these stars like Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson on the team to take it to the next level.
Well said. Well said. And tell me, based on all your vast experience, what are some of your biggest marketing successes that you've had with the Jets?
Well, I think from the Jets perspective, again, unfortunately, for the 6 years I was there, we didn't win a lot of games. So, and I joked around when I worked at the Nets for 18 years. We had 3 years where 2 years we went to the finals, and probably about 5 years we went to the playoffs. So we didn't win a bunch of games there either. So I don't know if I'm just someone who's got to work for teams who aren't that good, because I know I can grind in the New York market. But you know, I think from the Jets perspective, and I always said it's all about being prepared for success. So, you know, again, we had to have a different offering for sponsors. We had to have a different strategies. You can't keep it about the wins and losses. A lot of it was fan experience. What did it mean for you to come to a football game in America? You know, what did it mean when you know, I always say they're not games, they're events. You know, we'd have a 1 o'clock game. I'd show up at 8:30 and I felt like I was late because people were tailgating already for, you know, an hour and a half, because that's what the NFL experience is. Now, it's also have had an experience here in the States where it's going with your buddies and drinking a lot of beer and, you know, hollering. And yeah, we also wanted to make it a family experience, because the best way to get new Jets fans is cultivating young ones. So we spent a lot of time about getting younger, because younger fans one day will buy the jersey, buy the tickets, and show up to the games.
Well said.
So it's important to cultivate fans, as unfortunately, you know, our fan base is up there a little bit. We get a couple letters a year where people got deceased and their tickets got, you know, put in someone else's name in people's wills. I mean, the stories you hear from Jet fans, I mean, it's a way of life. It truly is a way of life.
Absolutely. And Fred, tell me, over the years, how has the role of data and analytics evolved? Because most marketing has now become data and analytics based. But how has it evolved in the sports industry when it comes to the work you're doing?
Yeah, well, you just nailed it. It's not it's not evolving, it's everything. And I've told the last couple stops I've been in, I would give up salespeople to get more analytics people, because they're now they're telling you what's going to happen before it would happen. I would meet once a week when I was at the Jets with my head of analytics and he'd always come in like, what else can we do? And I wanted him to educate me, because he's the new wave, in the industry. And, they taught us where to get new ticket sales leads. They taught us where to get new sponsorship leads. I would always say, being in New York, there's so many corporations that are moving into the city from overseas and London and wherever. And I always said, I want to know who that company is first before the Yankees call them and someone else calls them. So, the analytics team, and then also there was variable pricing has become a big thing in sports. So, what you're going to pay if the Jets are playing the Cowboys is going to be one price, as opposed to, I don't want to name a bad team, but, Team X, who may not be as attractive. So, look, it happens in the airline industry, right? An aisle seat's more than an inside seat, first class, so, sports industries really followed that model, and analytics literally would sit in our ticketing system and change prices by the hour, depending on is it going to rain? Is it going to be beautiful? Did you win? Did you lose? Did a player get hurt? So it could all change, in a snap of a finger.
Well said. You also said that, how important it is to keep fans engaged, with the team. And my question is, how do you keep fans engaged and invested in the team, especially during the seasons when the team is not performing well?
Yeah, well, it gets back to what we talked about. It was content. We wanted the fans to live and breathe with these players, their families, their kids, what kind of Nikes they wear, where they go out to dinner, so the football side, and this happened on the basketball side too, when I was at the Nets, would give us access to these players, so we show how human they are. They're going to practice, but they're going home at night, and they're helping their kids with their homework. They're real human beings. I mean, they're warriors when they're out on that field or on that court. But when they leave there, the wife is still looking for them to take out the garbage. So it's things like that. Now, I'm not going to tell you that's what's going to make you stay as a Jet fan, but it's going to just peel back the onion a little bit, as we would say, and really give you an idea of what these guys are doing. And the team came up with a series that's called One Jets Drive, and it really was about, every week they would highlight a player, show them coming into the facility, leaving, the extra work, the extra weights, watching film. And it was important. Look, forget wins and losses. The probably hardest time for all of our careers in the industry was during COVID. We weren't allowed to have fans, and everyone was home watching games. And that year we won 2 games. So it was about the content, what else was going on. Gaming broke here in the States at that point, where people could gamble on their phones. It was legal where we lived in New Jersey at that time, so we were able to, kind of launch that boom as well. So it's look, as I always say, when you win ball games, the popcorn's always hotter and the beer's always colder. And but when you're losing, you can never go in and tell an owner or a CEO, hey, we're not selling or doing anything. The team's been terrible. My motto was let the owner say that. An owner that their team's terrible is like telling them their kid's ugly. Like, it ain't good. So I'm always no excuses, and we got to get more creative to figure it out.
Well said. Well said. My next question is on technology. You did speak about TikTok, but how is technology and social media changing sports marketing?
Look, it's everything. It's even think about how you consume. Forget sports marketing, but think about how you can consume the games now. And you could, I have a 16-year-old son. He's a big basketball fan, loves football, but to get him to sit down and actually watch a game with me probably isn't going to happen. But when he wakes up, he checks games out on his phone. He could tell me every stat from every player. He knows how his fantasy team did. And so it really has, to the youth, be, I don't know if it's good or bad, but it's all become about that device we all walk around with. So that, that's how you're telling people about tickets. That's how you're dropping content. You're telling people about trades. I mean, it's everything. And as they say, if you don't adapt, you're going to get chewed up. And, a lot of teams were ahead of the game in sports in general, and a lot of teams are behind. And, but you can see what one player does here again in the States with Lionel Messi coming over now and playing in the MLS, what they've done for the Apple TV, a subscription based. Everyone thought the MLS was crazy for going at.
Yeah.
It's a brand that still needs more eyeballs. Now they got, getting lucky never hurts. You get the Michael Jordan of soccer to come and play in your league, and now subscriptions, merchandising, and everything are through the roof. But now everyone is, following their Twitter feed. They're following their Instagram feed. Now it's up to the club to keep them there.
Correct.
And make it more about just Messi and what else goes on in Miami and how else they built their brand. So that's now on the club. Messi's done his job and ownership has done their job, but the content team now has to keep you, as we would say, sticky, that you keep coming back every day to, because then those eyeballs are then going to get your sponsorship numbers that really changes the, changes the scale 100% when you're getting more revenue in.
And, you've almost answered my next question, which was that what is the role of player personalities and star power in marketing any sports team?
Yeah, well, obviously we've talked about my time in the NFL. I've done some work over the years with the New York Islanders, and what I always said, those two sports, as great as the NHL and the NFL are, when you're at the game, you can't see them. So, I always joked around the NBA, the guys are basically running around in their underwear, they got shorts and a jersey on. So people knew who Michael Jordan was, people know who LeBron James is. Patrick Mahomes, a really good NFL fan, knows, but a lot of these guys could walk down the street, you wouldn't know who they are. The NHL, I think, has the biggest problem with that, because I just think they don't market enough without them with their helmets on. And, so that kind of stuff is really important in those leagues, because, look, you want these guys to be able to be cultural figures. I mean, that's where it's all gone. It's not just about being a gladiator on the field, or they're becoming cultural figures and sports and entertainment figures, not that they've just scored a goal or threw a touchdown. So, and that's where your content team has to build up these brands for these players. And look, a lot of them now, as they retire, so many of them are getting into broadcasting and doing other things, and they're investing. They're becoming business people. They want to learn what a lot of these figures, the first thing they'll say, especially when they're young kids, and these kids are young. As the older I get, the younger they look every year when we drafted someone. First thing the parents say is, what's going to happen for my son after football? And it was always up to, if your hierarchy's done the right way, your football operations or basketball or hockey operations will always have a plan for them to see what's next.
Correct. So I have time for 2 or 3 more questions. My next question, Fred, is how do partnerships and sponsorships contribute to the overall business strategy?
Well, look, it's it's usually the second or third biggest revenue stream. In the NFL, it's the TV deal, and it starts and stops there. Then it's tickets and sponsorship. But what's really, really important, and look at the title of your cast here, the brand called you, and you say it's the B word, it's brand. So a lot of times these sponsorship, salespeople will come in and they say, hey, I got a brand that wants to come in and activate on the grounds, and they want to buy advertisement. But does the brand make sense with the team? Does the brand make sense with what you're trying to accomplish? And a lot of times salespeople, I've been on both sides. I've led the team and I've sold in my career. And a lot of times these salespeople, they just want to put up numbers and make their commission. Correct. And they're not worried about it. And the marketing people, go through the roof, because what was promised, how it was activated, I always said, sponsorship people sell the dream, and the marketing team's got to deliver the nightmare of what was promised. So if you could get brand alignment, but that all starts from the top, and that's your leader, and I mean more from the CEO president side to say it's hard when you're under pressure to deliver numbers to turn a deal away because maybe a certain brand doesn't align with your brand. I feel that's very, very important. Every year when I was at the Nets and when I was at the Jets, we would put brand guidelines together. So when you bought a sponsorship with us, we would deliver to you here's our logos, here's our IP, here's how you can market, because we never wanted to walk in and see someone using our logo or depicting our brand a way that we did not want it depicted.
Well said. Well said. Absolutely. So two more questions now for you, and these are a little more, general and a little broader. Do you think there are plans to globalize the viewership of the NFL? Because I know that the Indian Premier League, which is again a very large cricketing franchise, has now made it to America. Do you think the NFL has got a market outside America?
They're getting there. We mentioned during this how the NFL is starting to give teams marketing rights outside of the U.S. London, Germany, China. There's a slew of different countries now that the NFL is in, and look, some of it obviously you get into time restraints of when the games are broadcast. So we did a lot of work in London to rebroadcast our Sunday game the following morning. Etc. So I think it'll get there. I think nobody does the global game better than the NBA. Now, the difference is the NBA is led by international players. So that makes it a lot easier. Again, when I was at the Nets, we had a couple of Chinese players. So we did a lot of marketing in China. We sold a lot of brands in China to show off their brand here in the US. We knew a lot of eyeballs were watching. So it's a little different because, again, there's the international game has just exploded in. There are some international players in the NFL, but not enough. And then I think as that grows, then that's where, the eyeballs. But look, 2 years ago, we played a game in London and it was amazing. We played a game sold out. And when in Tottenham, and when you walked into the game, the ball got kicked off and 70,000 people were already in their seats ready to go. They weren't tailgating. Now they were fans of football. It was amazing. There was a lot of green and Jets in the stands, but the overall, everyone was just wearing NFL jerseys. A lot of people were retired and gone, but they just loved watching the sport. So it was a great platform for the NFL, not even for the Jets, but I think and you'll see this year, there's always 4 London games. There's I think there's 1 or 2 in Germany this year. And you'll see that, expanding little by little, because these games got to go global.
Yeah.
And you keep asking about partnerships. The next wave for partnerships is getting global brands to come to the US to advertise in New York for the Jets and Giants or whatever team you work for.
Great response. Thank you. And my last question to you, Fred, and I'm going to ask you to now look at your crystal ball and say, how do you think the future of sports marketing will look like? And what are the trends and technologies that you believe will shape it?
Well, I think what's really happening now is the RSN situation here in the States with the regional sports networks. And what you're seeing, again, on your mobile device, a lot of people in different areas don't always love their local sports teams. You may be a Dallas Cowboy fan, you may be a Laker fan, so now what's happening is you can appointment view on your phone and sign up to watch every Laker game, to watch every Cowboy game. The sports regional networks, I just feel we may get to, unfortunately, a pay-to-play society where you're just paying for whatever game you want to watch, and you don't have to worry about these secondary games. And that is becoming real. By the NFL just did a monster deal with YouTube, which will be very interesting to see what happens there. We talked about the Apple deal with MLS. So I really think, and again, I think a lot of that's going to appeal to the youth, because I use my son as the example for a lot of brain sessions I do when I have things going on in my career. If I asked him to pay $170 to watch every NBA game, he probably wouldn't. But if he could pay $40 just to watch every net game, or pay $2.99 when he wanted to watch certain games, he'd probably do that. And I think we're just getting into a society. You're seeing it now. People gave up their cable, but they have Netflix, they have Hulu, they have HBO Max, they have YouTube TV, and people are doing that with the streaming. So I think the streaming situation really is going to be what's going to be next level for all these leagues.
Well said. Well said. And on that note, Fred, I just want to say thank you so much for speaking to me. Thank you for speaking to me about your own amazing journey as a sports marketer. I think it is so fascinating because I haven't spoken to anybody who's achieved everything that you have as a sports marketer. Thank you for talking to me about NFL, New York Jets, branding, sponsorships, technology, and what you think the future will look like. Thank you again.
Well, thanks for having me, and congrats to yourself. You know, the numbers you gave me about how your brand and your numbers have expanded internationally is amazing. So congrats on all your success.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.